Hey, it's Adrian and today I'm really excited. I'm going to be reviewing this Lenovo Legion T7i gaming desktop. Now this one in particular comes with an Intel i9 12900K and RTX 3080 with 10 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of DDR5 4800 MHz, and an all-in-one liquid cooler. So in this review I'm going to cover, just the general overall performance, gaming performance, a little bit of, rendering test to see how well it does with video rendering, and, noise levels and things like that. So if you're interested in buying this computer, stick around. All right, so before I get into the rest of the review, I just want to mention that I bought this with my own money. It's not a sponsored video. It wasn't sent by Lenovo. And this particular configuration comes in at around 2,400 US or 3,100 Canadian. Of course, taxes aren't included. And I think it's actually still a pretty decent value, and I'll get into that later in the video. In terms of specs, so you get a 34-liter case, and that weighs about 38 pounds or 17 kilograms, and it comes with an i9 12900K, so that's the 16-core, 8 performance cores, 8 efficiency cores. It's on a Z690 motherboard. There's an RTX 3080 LHR with 10 gigs of VRAM, 1 terabyte Gen 4 SSD, and a 1 terabyte 7200 RPM 3.5-inch hard drive. There's 32 gigs of DDR5 RAM at 4800 MHz, and there's two 16 gigabyte sticks, and the max capacity is 128 gigabytes. There's also an 850 watt gold rated power supply, and you also have PCIe 5.0, PCIe 4.0, and two PCIe 3.0 slots. There's also M.2 slots. It's a 360 millimeter AIO with addressable RGBs, and the case dimensions are 8.3 inches by 17.7 inches by 19 inches. In terms of the overall case design, it looks really nice. I wasn't too sure when I saw it on the site, but in person it does look really nice. The build quality is also excellent, but let's take a look at the details. On the back of the case, you're going to find standard USB 2.0 ports there. There's a small light switch there that lets you cycle through some preset lighting modes. There's also some USB 3.2 ports there and one Type-C port. You also have an RJ45 connector if you want to hardwire it. You have your audio ports and SPDIF. And then finally on the graphics card, you have 3 display ports and 1 HDMI. On top of the case, you have 2 USB 2.0 ports, 2 USB 3.2 ports, headphone jack, microphone jack, power button, but there is no Type-C port anywhere to the top. You also have this removable dust filter here, which I've loosened, and there's 2 120 millimeter fans as well. So you're not going to want to leave anything on here to restrict airflow. The left side of the case is where you're going to find this very thick glass panel, and the only way to remove it is to remove these 4 screws. So let me just go ahead and show that. So I just want to show how thick this glass panel is, and because it's so thick, it's pretty heavy too. So you can see that's about how thick it is. Hopefully I can get that in focus. So it's pretty thick. So these 4 areas where the screws were, they do have like a rubber fitting around here to minimize vibration with the glass. And at the bottom here, you have a shroud and the power supplies in there. There's also 2 standoffs if you want to mount the GPU vertically. Taking a look at the inside of the case, so you can see this is the RTX 3080, and here's the radiator for the all-in-one cooler. And you can see there's only a couple of inches there. So if you're planning on upgrading this card later, that's something to be mindful of, that it's almost the entire length of the case inside. Now, one thing I want to point out is you can see there's kind of like a brace right there, or a bracket, and that's screwed into the graphics card. And it actually did a pretty good job because this was shipped without any type of packing foam, and the graphics card stayed, nice and tight in there, no sagging or anything like that. So here's the 3080 removed, so you can see it's a triple fan design. Not a bad looking card. And of course, for the inputs, you have HDMI and 3 display ports. Cabling wise, everything looks pretty good. A lot of stuff is zip tied and kind of routed out of the way. And here is where you'll find the 1 terabyte Gen 4 NVMe drive. So if you do want to upgrade that, you'll have to remove the graphics card to get access to that. And we have the 2 sticks of 16 gig DDR5 RAM here. The cabling job is still really nice at the back. Everything is out of the way. Now, this did come with a 3.5-inch hard drive, but you also have the option to add in a second one, and you have the power cable and SATA cable there already pre-wired. Now you can also put the 2.5-inch SSDs there. However, there's no wiring there that's pre-ran, but it does come with a bunch of cables to add to the power supply. And you have some SATA cables and things like that here. So in terms of fan placement, the 3 in the front are the intake fans to pull in cool air, and then the 2 in the top and the 1 in the rear are going to be the exhaust fans to vent out the hot air. At the bottom of the computer, there's 4 rubber feet just to again minimize vibrations, and there is a removable dust filter, and that's secured by a screw down here. The front of the case has this perforated mesh just to let airflow in to the intake fans, and you have an i9 sticker here, and of course the Legion logo up there. Here's an example of what happens when you press the lighting switch. So when I press it, all the lights are cut except the Legion logo and the GPU light. Again, everything shuts off except the GPU light, and then finally one more press, that turns everything on. Okay, let's take a look at the Lenovo Vantage software. So this is the software that comes with Lenovo's Legion computers or laptops to control everything. So you can see on the dashboard here, you can see CPU utilization. Mine is really high because I'm running OBS and it's recording 4K lossless. Now you can also see GPU utilization and VRAM, and you also can see your hard drive space. And if you click into info, you have your serial number and a bit more info. You could do system updates here, hardware scans, and things like that. Now, the most important area I think in this is up here, which is thermal mode. So you can see there's a performance mode, balance mode, and quiet mode, and you can pick whatever suits you. Realistically, I'm just going to keep it on performance mode because I want the maximum performance whenever possible. It'll be higher fan speeds, but so far it hasn't been loud enough where I think I need to be out of this mode, and I'll test that later for you. Now you also have an option here for network boost and auto close, and this is just when you're gaming. You can kind of cut different software so that you have most resources dedicated to gaming. Now, most importantly, probably is going to be lighting. So you can see there's different profiles here. So if I click on number 2 and you look at the computer, you can see all the lights change to blue. And then if I hit 3, it's pretty much dark except for the Legion logo at the front and the graphics card. I'm going to put it back to 1, and also you could just turn it off completely so you have no lights, but that GPU light always stays on. But if you go into customize, you can see here are the 3 profiles we were cycling through, and you can just customize however you like. So take for example profile 1, you can see right now it says Legion icon lighting front. So I have options for static, flicker where it's going to just flash, and breathe where it's going to slowly fade in and out. I'm just going to leave it on static, but you can cycle through here and you can change the ambient lighting again. So some of these lights, they're kind of locked to a specific color, but as you get deeper into here, you can see now I can pick different type of effects. So there's rainbow effect, there's CPU temperature, which is pretty neat. If your CPU is cool, it's going to be blue. If it gets hot, it's going to be red. And you could just play around with these different modes. Now you can also change the brightness or intensity of the light and the speed. So you can see if I pick something like 4 and I go to, let's say, Meteor, you can see that light is rotating pretty quickly. Now, say I go to number 4, speed is at 4 again, and here is where you have some customizability. So I could change the color on the back fan. There's say green, red, pink, etc. Then finally you have the front fan lightings set to blue right now, but again, you can change these and you can change the speed of them as well. So you can see it right there. And then last is the top fan lighting. I can't get that in this shot, unfortunately, but again, you have the same type of options. So when it comes to gaming performance in Warzone, if I go to the options, you can see it's set to full screen and the resolution is at 4K right now. Now you can see frame rate is set to unlimited. If I go to quality, pretty much everything is on the highest settings that it could be. And then if you go all the way down, you can see the DLSS is on, and I have it set to the 4K mode, not the 8K mode. And that's about the frames per second I'm getting right now, if you look at the top left. Now if I switch that to 1440p, for those of you who are going to game in 1440p, you can see that's the FPS that I'm getting right now. For those of you who are going to be gaming in 1080, so I'll switch that right now, and you can see that the frames per second have jumped a little. Just keep looking in the top left corner there. So overall gaming performance in Warzone, it's pretty smooth. Again, I have everything set to max, and I was running OBS in the background and it's capturing this at 4K resolution. That's using a good chunk of the graphics card's resources. So obviously when you're playing, you can expect better performance than I'm getting. Playing Fortnite with the 3080 was even better than on Warzone, of course. So I was getting around the high 90s in terms of FPS, and that's based on it being at a 4K resolution, unlimited frames per second, full screen. Now at 1440p, the frames per second were even better, so I was averaging around 160, around that range, and you can see gameplay is quite smooth. There's really no hiccups, no problems at all. For those of you who are going to be gaming in 1080p, so applying 1080p resolution with the 3080, the frames per second were pretty much in the 200s range. So, having it at an unlimited FPS or frame cap, it's a really smooth, really fluid experience. You're going to have no problems running Fortnite on this. Playing Microsoft Flight Simulator on 4K was not something that I think was going to be possible with a 3080, but you can see when I launched the game, it actually recommended ultra settings by default. Now, I obviously have no experience with this simulator, and one of the viewers had asked that I test this just so they could see how the computer handles it on ultra quality, and I can say that it handles it effortlessly. It's very smooth. I did forget to enable the frames per second, unfortunately, but you can see it's a really smooth type of experience. There's no lags, hiccups, or anything like that, and the computer wasn't, overly loud or overheating like crazy, so it handled it really fine even at a 4K resolution. When it came to 3D Mark, the computer got a pretty good score, so it got 17,087, and I had to run this without OBS because when I ran it with OBS, I was getting around the 15,000 to 16,000 range, so turning off screen recording definitely helped. So you can see that it puts it at about 93 to 94% better than other similar benchmarks. Cinebench scores were pretty respectable too, so for multi-core performance it had 26,153 points, and that puts it above a Threadripper 1950X, which is also a 16-core processor, and then single-core performance was 2009, and it was at the top of the list. So I have the free version, I don't have the paid version which uses, most of your GPU, so keep that in mind. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this almost 20 gigabyte file, so it's a 21-minute clip, bring it into Resolve, and just go ahead change the frame rate, and let that load up. So that's quite a large file. You could see the timeline resolution is set to 4K, and then playback quality it's set to full. Now if I go ahead and hit play, you can see there's not really any drop frames, it's perfectly fine. Now I'm just going to scrub through really quickly and see what happens. So it takes a couple of seconds to catch up, but then it goes right on playing. So there's not really any problem. So even with a near 20 gigabyte 4K file, again, this is 4K on a 4K timeline, there's really no problem here. So for an 18-minute 4K clip that's around 20 gigabytes in size, it took about 10 minutes to render. And again, it wasn't using as much of the GPU as possible because I'm using the free version of Resolve, which mostly relies on the CPU. In terms of overall performance, everything is really snappy. Like I have a bunch of stuff open. I can go ahead and open the Lenovo Vantage software, that pops up really quick. So right now I have a browser open. I have OBS recording in 4K quality, almost lossless quality. I have a 4K video playing, and that's the resolution that's set right here. And keep in mind, this is all on a 4K monitor, so it takes a bit of resources from the graphics card to drive that type of resolution. I can also have, work in Resolve going, and I can tab over to Call of Duty, and see I'm still getting great frame rate. So, most people aren't going to have all of this stuff open, so for general use or even, a bit more advanced use, this is way more than capable. So right now I have nothing open on the computer, so it's just sitting on the desktop, and you could see I have a sound meter at the bottom there, and it's just monitoring the audio levels. Okay, so I'm rendering a 4K file in Resolve, and it's almost 20 gigabytes, and we have about 6 minutes left to go. Looking at the ambient temperature, so you can see right now the computer gives you a couple options in the Lenovo Vantage software. So you have performance mode, where it boosts the computer's performance with higher speed and power consumption. There's a balance mode and keep quiet mode. I'm realistically always going to have it here because I want the max performance that I can get. Now, it's only going to really kick in if I'm doing something strenuous or, resource intensive. So right now it's very, very quiet. But if I go into a hardware monitor, we can take a look at the ambient temperatures. And the only thing I have going on in the background is I'm downloading Microsoft Flight Simulator. So here's the overall temperatures in the case and the fan speeds. Looking at the i9, here's the temperatures. So the AIO is doing a pretty good job of keeping that in check. Now scrolling down, here's the temperature for the memory modules and then for the SSD. Now keep in mind the SSD is writing data to it because it's downloading Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now looking at the 3080, here's the temperatures and here's the fan speed. So you can see right now it's not under any type of load, it's not doing anything, and overall the computer is just really quiet. Gaming under a full load at 4K resolution and running OBS at 4K, temperatures are pretty reasonable, so the i9 is fluctuating from about 63 to 70 degrees, and the GPU is at around 71 degrees, and that's Celsius and under 97% full load. Alright, so earlier that I mentioned that the Lenovo Legion was a pretty good value, and I know I might catch some heat for that because building it yourself is usually cheaper. But let me explain. So right now this is on sale for $2,400 and here are the specs. So what I did was I went on Newegg and I tried to match the parts as close as I could. Obviously some of the parts in here are not branded, but I tried to match it based on specs. So here we go. The i9 is the exact same across both systems. The motherboard, I picked this motherboard because it had the same type of features as on the Lenovo motherboard. And the RAM is exactly the same type of specs, so 32 gigs DDR5 4800, which you can see here. I also picked the cheapest 3080 that I could find, and it's a 10 gig LHR, same as on the Lenovo. Now the case is where I did cheap out a lot on because the Legion case is much better quality. The build quality is excellent, the side panel glass is really thick, really heavy, so I did cheap out a bit here. For the power supply, I picked an 850, which is what this comes with. It doesn't mention it here, but I checked the specs and it is 850. Now the SSD here is a 1TB Gen 3, but on the Lenovo it's a 1TB Gen 4. So again, I did cheap out a bit there, but it comes with a 1TB hard drive, and that's what I have here, the cheapest option. So for cooling, the Lenovo comes with a 360 ml AIO, and I just picked a 240 because that's all I could find at the time of this video. So I did cheap out a bit here. So the only things I haven't included are fans. I'm not sure how many fans comes with the Vantage system, and obviously thermal paste is not in here as well. The other thing to note is that the Windows 11 license, so that's kind of pricey. Obviously you can use a reseller site or just install Windows 10, since Windows 11 has been horrible so far since I've been using it. But taking a look at the price, it's $2,300 versus $2,400. So you can say it's about $100 difference, and perhaps $200, $250 difference if you don't go with the Windows 11 key. Alright, so I just want to show the BIOS option. So when you boot into the BIOS the first time, you just hit F1 to get here. You can see it's pretty basic on this first screen, so you can just set the CPU performance. There's like no changes that you can make in terms of the RAM, and then you can have LEDs on or off. But if you go into more settings down here, that's where you can see a bit more information. So what you have going on in your system, set the date and time and things like that. Now, going into devices, you can go into the lighting setup and you can change the brightness of the lights. So like for the logo and different areas, and you can set colors and things like that here. So you don't need to do it with the Vantage software, you could do it here, worst case. And then you have, other basic type of stuff that you would expect on any type of motherboard. Now going into advanced, there's some CPU settings here. But again, there's no settings that I could find where I could change voltage or anything like that to overclock, which is disappointing if you're planning on doing that. Now, it does have this option here for restore default overclocking. So it says if it's on yes, CPU and GPU overclocking will be disabled. And if you put it to no, it says it'll keep the setting. I've played with this on or off, and I haven't seen a difference anywhere. So, you know, I don't have any faith in that. Now, going into power, you have, you know, regular power stuff, and there's nothing in here regarding overclocking or changing voltages. So that's about all you can change in the BIOS, unfortunately. Now, there are some deal breakers with this system. I didn't find any options in the BIOS to overclock the CPU or the RAM. Maybe that'll come later, but I'm not holding my breath. The other thing is the RAM. From what I've seen online, the RAM compatibility with this board is super picky. So I don't think you could just buy any type of DDR5 module and just slot it in and it'll accept it. So can I recommend this computer? And it's an easy yes from me, because everything I've thrown at it so far has been able to handle. I've been able to game even at 4K. I've been able to do my editing and it handles the timelines, no problem, 4K timelines. Thermals are great. Noise levels super manageable, and just general overall productivity, launching apps, having many things open, which is what I normally have. It's been able to handle all of that. No crashes, no sluggishness, nothing like that, no overheating, shutoffs, none of that stuff. Now, could you build this cheaper? The answer is usually always yes, especially now that graphics card prices are starting to decline a bit. Maybe you can save a bit more. Now, I did show on Newegg when I priced it out, they were pretty similar in price, maybe $100 difference. And if you didn't get a Windows 11 license and you just use your Windows 10 one again, maybe $200 difference. Now, at the time of this video, those specs, you know, it's still $100 to $200 difference. I know graphics card prices are declining currently, so maybe you can pick it up for a little bit cheaper if you try to do it yourself. However, you know, you're gonna save a lot of time because you're not the one building it. If there's a problem with a part, you're not going to the store to return it. If you have a problem, you know, after 30 days, you're not contacting separate manufacturers for RMAs. You're just dealing with Lenovo directly. And so far, I've had to contact them. I contacted them about that bent back panel earlier, and they're gonna ship me out like a completely new unit. I just asked for the panel. They said they can do that. They'll just send me a new unit. So, I mean, the customer service so far has been pretty good. So overall, I think this is a great option. For those of you who want something powerful, but you don't want to spend all the time, you know, getting parts, building it yourself, and, you know, worrying about potential returns and things like if something's not compatible, you can just buy this. It comes to you and it's pretty much ready to go. Now, if you are interested, I'm going to leave an affiliate link down below, but I highly recommend, you know, do what I did. Go on Newegg, go on Micro Center, Amazon, you know, kind of create like a part list or a wish list, add in all the parts and see what the price difference is. And, you know, you can decide if it's really worth getting this or if you want to try to do it by yourself. Well, I hope this review was helpful. You know, I really did try to focus on the things that I would want to know as a consumer before I bought a pre-built computer. And it's possible that I did miss something since you guys have different use cases than me. And if that's the case, you know, please leave a question down in the comments down below and I'll do my best to get back to you. And as always, if you found this video helpful, please consider liking and subscribing. You know, I'm a growing channel. It really helps me out a lot, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.